first ever video on my new channel, The Steph Story, where I will be talking about some book stuff and book related stuff. I just wanted to do a quick little get to know me so you can know me, and maybe I can learn something about you too in the comments below. My name is Stephanie Iris. I'm 24 years old and I currently live on the East Coast. I'm not telling you which state, so you can't stalk me. I have a bachelor's degree in musical theater and gender and sexuality studies, which I don't use. Obviously, I love books. If you could not tell, I love books. I also really love cooking and baking and organizing and decorating. I collect crystals and witchy little knickknacks. I have two pets. Jade, a black cat that we just recently adopted. She's estimated to be 4 years old, but we're not entirely sure. She was rescued from a hoarding situation where the owners had passed. But she's super sweet. She's very shy, but she's awesome. And I also have a pet lizard. He's a bearded dragon named Topaz. Yes, the crystal theme continues. And he's currently in brumation, which is like lizard hibernation. So he's not gonna say hi in the video today. I'm also really passionate about politics and education, which I won't be talking about politics on this channel. Nobody sweat, everybody relax. I also really love tea. Currently, I am drinking a tall glass of green tea with a little bit of sugar in it because the sick is getting around, y'all. And I gotta keep that immune system up. So part of my get to know me today, I wanted to talk about some books that are really near and dear to me. They're not necessarily my favorites and they're not like my top 5 or 6 or however many I end up picking, but I just want to share to give a general idea of some of the stuff I really enjoy reading. I typically stick with fantasy, contemporary fiction. I do like a little bit of historical fiction. I read classics. I read a lot of social studies books and histories and social theory books and poetry, but mostly I will be talking about the fantasy and the fiction and the YA books that I really love. So first things first, let's talk about a book that was really formative for me. I don't even know why. I reread it recently and I was kind of like, this book is a little boring. But I was crazy about it as a kid. And that is Entwined by Heather Dixon. I was obsessed with this book. As you can tell, it's very loved. I read this book over and over when I was a kid, and I thought it was the most amazing magical thing. It's about these 12 sisters. Their names are in alphabetical order, and their names are all flowers. Amazing immediately. It takes place in a sort of fantastical, historical, maybe England type place. I don't know. Some sort of European castle with kings and princes and clockmakers. And it's about how their mother passes and they discover magic lives in their castle. And they love dancing and they dance. And then some scary, mysterious stuff happens to them that they have to navigate while also mourning their mother, and maybe some of them are falling in love. But I loved this book as a kid. Highly recommend if you're looking for an easy read that'll suck you in. It's nothing like that's gonna blow your mind or change your view of the world, but I loved this book as a kid, and every time I reread it, it feels so nostalgic. Another book that I read really recently, I think just last year, was Pachinko by Min-Jin Lee. I know this book won a bazillion awards. It says right here, National Book Award finalist and 10 best books by the New York Times Book Review in 2017. Clearly I was behind. But to be honest, I don't typically read books like this. I don't typically read books from a much more mature point of view. I don't read international affair books that have tons of like military implications involved in the plot because I really don't like war stories. But I read this book because, I mean, the cover is fabulous. Look at that gown, amazing. And I was really drawn in by the little blurb on the back. And so I picked it up and I read it, and it took me forever to read. It's a pretty thick book, but I've definitely read bigger books in a shorter amount of time, and it took me so long to read. And it was because every single word was so deliciously chosen. It was like every sentence I had to chew and chew. I didn't want to miss a single word. I was obsessed with this book. And after I finished it, I was kind of like, yeah, that was a good book, you know, give it like 4.5, 5 stars. It was good, yeah. And then I thought about it for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and I could not stop thinking about Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. I was obsessed with this book. The last book I wanted to talk about that's a solo book, and I know this author is really controversial, especially with her newer books, but Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Rowell. This book, it's so well written, and I read it when I was really young, and I remember the language was at such a mature level that it felt so real to me in a way that wasn't just a typical story written for a younger audience. Rainbow Rowell, you gotta give it to her. You gotta give it to her. She makes some really good stories. I also really loved her book Fangirl when I was a kid, but this book was one of the first romance novels where it wasn't like the romance was the center of the main character's entire lives. Eleanor and Park had a lot of other issues going on that they navigate throughout the story, and it was not like a you're special, I choose you, like typical YA fantasy novel with like the angel that selects the boring brown-haired girl or whatever, the high school. This story was just, it was a romance novel that really took me by surprise. It really informed my interests in romance as I got older. I definitely navigated away from the sort of like the tropey romances. Don't get me wrong, I love a good trope. Enemies to lovers, rivals to lovers. Don't even get me started. Maybe in a future YouTube video. But I love the way she crafted the romance in the story between two young people in a very realistic way that didn't make you feel not special because you weren't specially chosen to be loved. You know what I'm saying? Okay, on to some series that I really love. So, Holly Black. Where do I even start? I love Holly Black. Her series, The Cruel Prince, it did not disappoint. It is so well crafted. My one complaint is that I wish they were longer. I was so shocked that the third book was so short. But, you know, Holly Black said everything she had to say. So, you know, I guess that's fine. But the romance, the magic, the complexity of the main character. I'm so tired of reading main characters that are like personality-less and emotionless and don't care about anything and just let things happen to them and happen to also have what it takes to be a hero. I loved the main characters in The Cruel Prince. I loved the dynamics of the world. I also have Stolen Heir. Very excited for the next book to come out. The Cruel Prince really took me by surprise. I know it was like really popular in book talk, and I get nervous with mainstreamy books because Colleen Hoover and I are not BFFs. So I shied away from it for a few months. But The Cruel Prince, If you want to fall into a world that feels just like 3 degrees to the left from the real world in a way that is so deliciously written, I'm afraid you have to read The Cruel Prince. Another series that I really love and read recently but read originally when I was really young is the Lunar Chronicles. I know a lot of people have read them, and I know retellings of old stories is very overdone. Well, I won't say very overdone, but I will say it's becoming a little tired. I loved this book. It was the first time I saw like fantasy and sci-fi kind of become one thing. It was probably the first sci-fi book I read ever. This whole series. I have a full series in my hands, but they're so heavy. Here we go. I'm putting them down. But I love that series. All the main princesses are amazing. I love all their little romances. The world is so exciting. The politics involved are exciting without being like overly complex and making you have to work hard to read the book. It's definitely like a nice vacation series. If you're taking like a week and you just want to sit on the beach and read, I would recommend the Cinder series. I reread it, I think last summer, and I just remembered how much I loved it. Lastly, I wanted to talk about probably my all-time favorite series, which I know I said I wasn't going to talk about all of my favorite books in this video. It's just gonna be like books that I like so you can get to know my taste a little. But this is probably my all-time favorite series, and it is My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. And I know this whole series was huge just a few years ago, but I studied abroad in London while I was in college, and I saw the play adaptation of My Brilliant Friend. It was a 2-part play, so it was a full day of theater, and it just like shook me to my core and chewed me up from the inside out. It broke my heart, it made me laugh, it broke my brain. I was so excited to see a modern depiction of Italian culture because I myself am Sicilian, so I was just so excited by all the things that I was seeing on stage, and I had to read a book. So the first book they actually were selling at the show. So this is from London. This first book is from London. I bought it. It was like 3 times the price I probably could have gotten it on Thrift Books for, just because it was like merch, I guess, for the show. But the rest of the books I bought here in America, and I love this series. It just, the dynamic between the 2 friends, how the narrator takes you through her life, holds your hand like you're her child, through her crazy story. It did get a little complex at times, and it was definitely a major book that got me out of sort of my interest in like YA books, and kind of the beginning of my stray away from the high school perspective, because I'm 24 and sometimes it's a little weird to read about 16-year-olds that are like falling in love, because I'm thinking about when I was 16 and falling in love, and I'm like, no, go back to class. So this series it just blew me away. I read it during COVID actually, because I studied abroad in London right before COVID happened, and I ate the series up. It was so exciting to have time during COVID, even though I was still in college, to read this humongous series and take on this humongous world. And I love this series. I love this series. I could talk about it forever and ever. So yeah, that's a little get to know me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and please be patient with me and take this video with grace. This is my first video that I'm putting on YouTube. I'm sure my skills in video editing and talking at a camera will only improve from here. I hope to post every 2 weeks maybe to start, and it's just gonna be bookish content. So hello BookTube, please welcome me. Please don't hate me. And thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your day.